Okay, trying to gather my thoughts here. This video has been a really long time in the making, and so I have several years of thoughts bouncing around in here, and I have a lot to say. Apologies in advance if I start to rant at parts, but this is a subject that I am extremely passionate about. Basically, we're here today to talk about this. This is Nduja. Between myself and Eva, Nduja is probably our shared favorite ingredient. And yet, if you've watched many of our videos, thinking about it, you might realize that we never talk about it. Eva comes from Calabria, where this product is from. This is like their pride and joy. There are so many recipes that use Nduja, and yet she never cooks recipes with it. We never show it. We never put it on anything. I think if I recall correctly, we did one video many years ago showing how Eva's dad makes homemade Nduja, and then I think in only 2 other videos since then, in all our time on YouTube, we've used Nduja. Once was on a pizza, and once Eva made chocolates stuffed with Nduja. But yeah, we basically never use it, ever. And there's a reason for that, and we're gonna get to that in a bit. There's quite a story behind this product and our relationship to it. It even involves, how should I put it? Maybe corruption is too strong of a word. Alleged political mischief. But anyway, we're gonna get to all that. First, I should probably explain what Nduja is. Nduja is basically a salami. It looks like a salami. It comes from Eva's home region of Calabria, which is the toe of Italy. And it's got to be their most famous product. It's like if you go as a visitor to Calabria, you're going to encounter Nduja. I grew up in Maine. What lobster is to Maine, Nduja is to Calabria. Does that make sense? It's very unique though. It's not a hard sausage. It's spicy, it has the famous Calabrian peppers in it, of course, but it's soft and spreadable. Right out of the sausage, you can spread it on bread, for instance, but even more than that, you can melt it. It will melt in heat, and so often how you see Nduja served in Calabria are in these little things called scaldinduja. It literally means like Nduja heater. And you have a little tea candle and a little dish, and you put the Nduja in, and after a few minutes, the heat from the candle will melt the Nduja, so it becomes almost more of like a sauce. You can dip stuff in it. You can melt it and make a pasta sauce. Pasta with Nduja is still probably my favorite pasta of all time. You can put it on a pizza, and it'll melt in the oven on the pizza. In fact, pizza with Nduja on it is my favorite pizza. So it's a very versatile product, but overall, the best thing about it is simply the taste.
It's heaven.
It's much more than just meat plus chili pepper, even though essentially that's all the product is, because in the process of aging, it gets this kind of slightly sour, almost fermented, funky taste to it. There's nothing really like it, and it's delicious. I don't know how to live without this anymore. So now that we know what Nduja is, how is it made? I've learned a lot about this subject over the last few years. It began with this video here where Eva's dad showed us how he made his homemade salami. I've since seen it made by homemakers in several different contexts. But last summer, Eva and I got a glimpse at how it is manufactured in Calabria on a commercial scale. You see, Nduja is not actually native to all of Calabria. It comes from a little town called Spielinga. That's where it was invented. And all the best, really all the real Nduja manufacturers are in this little town in Spielinga. So Eva and I went there and we got a first-hand look at this amazing Nduja factory, the small little Nduja factory that makes, in our opinion, how should I say, the best mass-produced Calabrian Nduja we've ever had. So let's start from the meat. Nduja is made with pork, and what makes it so soft and spreadable and delicious is the high fat content. There's no magic here. You want something amazing, you gotta use fat. The fat content of Nduja can vary, but it's usually really high. It's mostly fat. It's like 80–90% fat. The more fat you use, the softer it is. So when you go into these Nduja places, there's maybe a little bit of lean meat mixed in there, but basically what you're gonna see is a ton of pork fat being ground up. Yeah, it's crazy, right? But Nduja wouldn't be Nduja without the spice, and that's where the Calabrian peppers come in. So once the meat is ground, they mix it with a ton of pepperoncino. I mean a lot. That's what gives the Nduja its flavor, its color, and the only other ingredient other than that is salt. Once the pork and the pepperoncino and the salt are all mixed together into a very smooth paste, it's stuffed into a natural pork lining, like a sausage. They tie it up, and then it's time to be smoked. This is where actually there is one advantage to buying a commercial Nduja, even in Calabria, because most people who make it at home, they don't have smokers. They don't have the ability to cold smoke. So most homemade Nduja actually is not smoked at all. I like the smoky flavor, so that is one trade-off with the homemade stuff, which usually tastes better overall, but then the mass-produced stuff, which has that smoky flavor. So it goes into this smoking room, and it's very lightly smoked. I mean, they leave it in there for a while, but like, you know, Ava and I were able to just walk around in the smoking room while they were smoking Nduja. It's very, very light, which makes sense because it doesn't have a super smoky taste in the end. And I asked Franco, our guide who was showing us around, he works there, I asked what kind of wood they use because I'm a barbecue fanatic, and he didn't seem particularly concerned with it. He said sometimes they use oak, sometimes they use beech, but it didn't sound like there was like any particular wood that they were focused on using. After the Nduja is smoked, it's simply time to be aged. Now, when you make normal salami, part of your goal is to actually dry out the meat. Nduja is a little bit different because it's basically all fat, so you're not really trying to dry it out, you're just trying to let the meat age and kind of ferment, develop the flavors. So Franco took us into their huge aging warehouse, and that's where I found paradise. The time required to age Nduja varies a lot on its size. The bigger the Nduja is, and as you saw, there are some that are huge, the longer it can age, and so the better the flavor will become. Smaller Nduja, you can only age them for so long, so you can't develop the flavors as far. But basically, that's all there is to it. It's a really simple food. It's some meat, it's some spicy pepper, it's salt, you smoke it, you age it. The fact that it's so simple in theory makes this next part just so much more frustrating. So why don't we use this incredible product that we love so much more often? Well, most of our audience on YouTube, we can go into our YouTube and see the demographics. Most of our audience is American. I know, there are many all over the world. I think actually Italy is second. I know many of you are watching from Canada, from the UK, from all over, but primarily our audience is American. I know that when you watch our videos, you undoubtedly see us all the time using weird, strange ingredients that we had to hunt all over the internet for, or had to source from weird places. When we do something like that, we always try to give suggestions for, you know, if you can't find Saba grape must, here are some other alternatives that you can use. But always with the caveat that if you want the real thing, you need to seek out this ingredient, because we are just very uncompromising that you need the right ingredients to make the food properly. It's a pain, but it's one of our principles that we'll always stand up for. Even though that's one of our principles though, we don't like to, how should I say it, taunt our audience with ingredients that they can't get. For instance, a lot of people have asked us to do more Italian artichoke recipes, and that would be very easy because we spend a lot of time in Italy. We have access to amazing artichokes and can make all kinds of artichoke recipes. The problem is that artichokes in America are basically a different vegetable. I mean, they don't work the same. We've tried it. You can't cook Italian artichoke recipes using American artichokes. It's like trying to replace grapes with an apple. It just doesn't work. So we avoid the topic because we want these recipes to be useful for people. We want most of our audience to be able to cook them. It's no fun for us if it's just like, hey, look at what we made today. You can't make it. And that is basically, unfortunately, the case with everything related to Nduja when it comes to America. The United States has banned the importation of Nduja from Calabria. Actually, more than that, you might not know this, but the United States in the 1970s, due to a swine virus that was affecting Italy and other countries outside the US at the time, they banned all Italian meat imports. Widespread. No Italian meat coming into the United States. This was many, many decades ago, and as the United States has even officially said, this swine virus is a long gone temporary problem that does not affect Italian meat at all. And yet this ban still stands. Now I can hear some of you now, you're going, hey, Harper, I go to the store and I buy imported mortadella or prosciutto di Parma, and it says imported from Italy on it. That's right. That's because there is a pay-to-play system in place. So all imports from Italy are banned, all meat imports, but if you can put together a very hefty fee, you can get your region's products stamped and certified in the US, and they can be available to be sold here, which is why you only see meat from the richest regions in Italy. That's where the prosciutto comes from. That's where the mortadella comes from. Calabria is one of the poorest, it actually might be the poorest region in Italy, and they simply can't afford to play the game. So still to this day, if you live in the United States, you simply don't have access to imported Calabrian Nduja. I've seen some Nduja sold in the US that says imported from Italy. That means they made it in one of these richer regions that can import, meat into the US, but it's not real Calabrian Nduja. Now I hear a few more of you saying, but Harper, I see Nduja in the United States. I went to Italy and I found Nduja. Yep, you can find things that say they're Nduja, but chances are they're not. There are a bunch of companies in America that have tried to make Nduja here and sell it here. You're starting to see it on restaurant menus. You'll find it in Whole Foods. It's seemingly everywhere. Lots of you guys, many viewers, will find a new one and send it to me, and every time I immediately order it and I try it. So as far as I know, I've tried them all. And boy, is the situation dire. Some of them are beyond bad, horrendously bad. The first one I ever found, it was probably the worst. It was made by La Quercia or something. They sold it at Whole Foods for a while. I haven't seen it. I think maybe they stopped selling it, thankfully. It was so disgusting. I mean, there's a difference between like tasting something and being like, oh, that's not the real thing, or like that's not the best version of that. This was like, why would a human being ever want to eat it? It tastes like cat food. Get it away from me. God, no, please, someone save me. Other brands I've tried have varying levels of quality. Some of them are edible, but that's about the best I would say for them. Nothing so far has come close to what real Nduja is, or even been very good. Except for one. Early on in our YouTube career, Ava and I made a video where we were traveling through Chicago, and we stopped at this company called Tempesta, and they make salami and guanciale and stuff. We met the owner, Tony, who's a fantastic guy. His family immigrated from Calabria, and they make Nduja. We tried their best Nduja, which they call it Inorba, which means it's like the big Nduja. It comes in the really big casing, And it was pretty good. Certainly not like on the same level as Calabrian Nduja, but a very good substitute, and it got us all excited. We were like, oh my gosh, like Nduja is available in the United States. This is fantastic. The problem we realized with that is that the only way to buy that Nduja is to buy the whole thing. Which means if you wanna try Nduja, get ready to buy $120 worth of it. Now, if you really like Nduja, that's actually pretty well worth it. It lasts for a long time in the fridge. But we understand that that's not a very convenient deal for most people. But Tempesta also had a smaller, more mass-produced version of Nduja. It actually looked like this. Comes in a small package. You find it in a lot of Italian markets now. And because that Nduja in Orba we had was so good, we started recommending that one to others. We're like, oh, Tempesta makes it. They're great, blah, 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 blah. And then we finally tried it ourselves. I feel bad saying this because the owner, Tony, he was such a nice guy, and we think that they're a great company. We bought their guanciale, we bought their Nduja in Orba, we think they're great. But I'm sorry, I have to call it like it is. Their smaller Nduja is not good. It is far from the real thing, and I would consider it to be a total waste of money. So that was disappointing, and we kind of felt like, oh, we're back to square one. You know, there isn't really a good viable option for getting Nduja in the US. Hey, future Harper here. You were just talking to past Harper. Literally in just the last few days since I recorded that, a brand new Nduja has come on the American market, and it changes everything. So stay tuned. By the end of the video, I'm going to tell you all about it. That's when I started thinking I should make my own. So here we go with my journey to make Nduja for myself. A lot of the Nduja process was really no problem for me. It's like, I have a meat grinder, it's easy to get meat, I can get Calabrian pepperoncino, maybe not the best Calabrian pepperoncino, but I can get it. I can certainly get salt, I can get sausage casing, but here's the trickiest part about making Nduja. Well, Calabria has a specific climate, and a Calabrian basement in an old stone building has its own even more specific climate. And really what Nduja needs in order to age properly is a cool place. You don't want it warm or hot, and you want the right humidity. Calabria is not super humid, but it's pretty humid. We live in Tucson, Arizona. Very hot and very dry. No one here even has a basement, let alone one that is cool and slightly damp. But like a lot of people who make cheese or salami at home, I thought I knew what the solution was. And that solution was a curing chamber. This here was my first attempt at a curing chamber. This is a Black & Decker mini wine fridge. Put your wine in there, keeps it chill. On paper, a wine fridge seemed like a good idea because a normal fridge, usually even the maximum temperature, the highest temperature, is still too cold for the Nduja. You don't want to refrigerate the Nduja, you just want to keep it cool, around 55 degrees Fahrenheit. I've known people who have used a wine fridge like this actually with pretty good success at making salami, even at making Nduja, but they lived in more humid climates than I do. With the Arizona climate, I found that nothing I put in there could keep it humid enough to age the Nduja. It's not big enough to put a humidifier in there, which would be the ideal thing. Trays of water with paper towels on top to wick moisture into the air, big sponges, even these specialty clay bricks that are made to expel humidity into the air. Nothing worked. So yeah, my first curing chamber didn't really work out at all. And basically my project of making Nduja at home stalled out for a very long time. But then two people entered my life who changed everything. This is Andrew and Sunny. They're an American couple, and we met through Pasta Grammar. They discovered our videos. And as you guys know, we love bringing people to Ava's hometown of Dasa, where we do our tours, we do our weekend Dasa. They came and visited Dasa, and like pretty much everyone who comes to Calabria, Andrew discovered Nduja there and fell head over heels in love with it, like I did. He learned about my frustrations making Nduja at home, and I'm just still like amazed at how kind this was. He took it upon himself to solve my problem for me. One day, a few months ago, he shows up with a trailer hitched to his car that he drove a long way across the desert to bring to me. And in it was, well, let me just show you. Meet the Pepsi fridge. This box here is the brain of the whole fridge. It monitors the temperature, and the humidity using this sensor, which is in the fridge. When the temperature gets above 55 degrees Fahrenheit, as it is right now, it'll turn on the fridge and cool it down. Similarly, when the humidity gets below 75%, like it is right now, it will turn on the humidifier inside. So all of a sudden, I had my very own curing chamber. It controls the temperature, it controls the humidity, so game on. Now enter two other Pasta Grammarian friends, Jeff and Cheryl. They came on the Pasta Grammar tour and the Weekend Dasa last year, and they also happen to live near us. Jeff is very much like a food nerd like me, so he jumped at the chance to come help me make Nduja. And so that's what we did. I got a ton of pork back fat, a little bit of lean pork meat, pork tenderloin. We ground it all up and mixed in a bunch of pepperoncino. I used salt according to the ratio that Ava's dad gave to me for how much salt to use depending on how much meat you're making. You can actually adjust all of this to taste, even though it's raw meat, by very simply cooking a little bit of the meat mixture. That's exactly what we did. Ava melted it in a pan, cooked it, we spread it on some bread, tried it. In the end, I decided I needed much more pepperoncino, I needed it spicier. So we mixed everything together and then we stuffed it into a lining that I found. It was, it's called beef bung. I know it doesn't sound super appetizing, but I wanted the kind of like big natural Nduja look. Normally with Nduja you would use a pork casing, but I couldn't find one big enough, so I went with beef. In the end, we made 3 of them, and I wanted to go all out, and I wanted to smoke the Nduja. Now, cold smoking, if any of you guys are like barbecue fans, you know, it's a little bit tricky. You usually need a dedicated cold smoker, because you want something that produces smoke, but not heat. You don't want to cook the meat, you just want smoke. I do not have a cold smoker, so what I did was I loaded my vertical smoker up with just a ton of pans of ice, put the Nduja at the top, and then ran the tiniest little fire. So we smoked the Nduja and then stuck it in the curing chamber, and it's been there ever since. Now it's time for a really quick disclaimer, just in case any of you out there are crazy enough to try this at home. Traditional homemade Nduja, the old school style, the way Calabrians have been making it for who knows how long. As I've said, the ingredients are meat, mostly fat, pepperoncino, and salt. That's it. Well, in the modern world, we know a little bit more about botulism, the dangers of it, and how to prevent it. Botulism can taint your meat if it is kept above a certain temperature for an extended period of time, even for a few hours, which is very much the case with Nduja. And the way you prevent that is by mixing in curing salts. Specifically in this case, I believe cure number 2. This is gonna be a case of do as I say, not as I do. I intentionally skipped the curing salt. Curing salt does affect the flavor and the color of meat. It gives the meat a slightly more hammy taste, and it tends to make meat kind of pink. And because I'm a little bit obsessed with this topic and with traditional methods, I wanted to first try, eventually I'll try one with the curing salt so that I can compare. But for my first one, I wanted to do it the old school, homemade style, which means no curing salt. And it also means that botulism is a risk. I am making this Nduja for me and for a select few people who understand the risk and are willing to take it. I'm going to be the guinea pig. As soon as we're done here, I'm actually gonna open up one of the Nduja and take one, a sample taste to make sure that there are no problems with it, that I don't get sick, anything like that before I give it to someone else. But I strongly urge you, and my imaginary lawyers also strongly urge you, to do not do this in the same way I did. Side note, if I die, I just want this on public record, I do want my tombstone to say that I died eating Nduja. I'm okay with that legacy. You might notice that my Nduja does not have the bright red color that mass-produced Nduja has, and there's a reason for that. In order to give Nduja that color. The dry chili pepper actually needs to be slightly damp, and that helps to activate a special protein in the pepperoncino that gives it that extra color. Most homemade Ndujas do not have that really bright red color. They don't go through the trouble because you're not really looking for appearance, you're looking for taste. So I didn't bother. Maybe next time I will. But anyway, if you're curious why my Nduja doesn't look red, that's why. It does seem soft and spreadable. Here goes. Wish me luck. I'm just kidding. So now my Nduja has been aging for several months. In a super ideal world, because I made kind of bigger ones, I would like to age them longer, but I'm gonna have to cut it short. And the reason is that I've got somewhere I gotta be. And it's also probably the best place to go in order to get a really qualified judge to taste my Nduja and give me some feedback. Yep, it's time to head to Calabria. I think that I am officially the first person in history to import Nduja into Calabria.
Operazione
Operazione Nduja. Ma proviamo o vediamo che fece. Se ne è buona o no. E devi essere onesto.
Certo. Allora, sarà buona.
Papà onesto.
Troppo grazie. Perché ci vuole 70%.
80-90% fat.
Poi ci vuole più piccante. Va bene.
È mangiabile.
È mangiabile.
È mangiabile.
È mangiabile.
Ci vuole più tempo?
Ci vuole più tempo per...
No, per maturare. No, è buona. La maturazione è buona. Solo che è sbagliata la quantità di grasso.
So there you have it, Papa Churi's assessment of my homemade Nduja. I will definitely be giving it another shot, next time with a little bit less fat and a lot more pepperoncino. Now, the good news is that if you're in America and you don't want to go through the hassle that I did of making your own Nduja, there is finally an excellent option for you. So that very same Nduja factory that we went and visited, they saw the problem that was going on in America and they decided to fix it. They still can't import Nduja into the US, but what they can do is import their knowledge. They went to America, trained a team there on how to make Nduja in America using the techniques of Spielinga, and it's available for everyone. We knew that they had gone to America and done this, but at the time, it was only available in a small brick and mortar shop just in Seattle, which isn't very helpful for most people in the United States. We told them over and over again, guys, you need to ship this nationwide. It would be so amazing. But then it didn't seem like anything was happening on that front. And then finally, just within the last few days, as we were traveling here to Italy, it's suddenly available online. It's even on Amazon. I will put a link down below. They are not a sponsor. They don't even know that we're giving them this shout out, but it's very, very good Nduja. In fact, a sample from the store in Seattle is what I was eating at the beginning of the video. So maybe, finally, the Nduja problem has been solved. I have one more quick and exciting update. A lot of you guys over the years have asked us about a cookbook, a pasta grammar cookbook, and we wrote one. It has been years in the making. I'm excited in maybe the next few videos to tell you more about it, but it is finally available for pre-order. Again, I will put a link down in the description below. We are super, super excited to share it with you, and we appreciate you checking it out. All right, guys, I should go because I'm pretty sure Mama Rosa has lunch waiting for me, but stay tuned because we have some fun Italian adventures coming your way. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up, it helps us a lot. and we will see you next time. Ciao.